What is up, listeners? Welcome to Predator vs. Movies. I am Dracula.
And I'm
Obviously.
Aiden.
And this is a podcast where we discuss and review the latest movie releases. We'll start off with a non-spoiler review before diving into a deep discussion of the film, and then we will ask the most important question: would this movie be better if the alien from Predator was in it? This week,
Are you Dracula or are you Boat Dracula? That's the question.
I'm actually David Balchian.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This week we will be reviewing the last voyage of the Demeter. Dracula is now on a boat. Before we get into that, we do have some news for you. First of all, we have some very somber and upsetting news.
Yeah.
Due to the writer and actor strike, which again cannot stress enough, good thing. We like that they're striking and we support them fully. Yep. But sometimes good things have consequences. Unforeseen
sometimes
consequences.
It's the price you gotta pay sometimes. Sometimes you gotta, like, there are a few casualties in the war, you know what I mean?
And one of these truly unfortunate casualties is the loss, or at least the pushing back, of one Craven the Hunter. It is moving its release date from, I think, October of this year to August 30th of next year. What a travesty.
That actually makes me so upset. I unironically saw that trailer and it was like, I know we talked about this before, but that trailer is legitimately interesting to me. And so, like, this is a bit, and I honestly don't give a fuck that it got pushed back, but also part of me is like, damn, no Craven.
I'm honestly, like, I was kind of looking forward to that movie. Just for, like, the absurdity. Like, sometimes you get excited for dumb movies. Like, this was mine. Yeah. This was my dumb movie. I was really excited for it. And now I have to wait a year.
That's but like again, me. If the Five Nights at Freddy's movie got pushed back, I'd be so upset. I'm so excited to see that one.
Yeah. It is like that. It's like Dune and Peter, like a really good movie, and Peter. I am actually probably more upset about losing out on Craven than I am on losing Dune.
Yeah,
that is valid. Like, that is a genuine fact.
Yeah.
As much as I think Dune 2 will be a much better movie than Craven the Hunter. Mm-hmm. Who's to say? Well, we don't know. We don't know for sure. Another bit of news is that Nathan Fielder has a new show. Aiden, why don't you tell us a bit about this news?
He sure does. It's called The Curse, and he co-wrote it with Benny Safdie, and it's going to be starring those two as well as Emma Stone. And I don't know why you tossed this to me, because you're the one that has more information about it.
Taking it back. The premise, this is the Wikipedia article on it. The series will explore how an alleged curse disturbs the relationship of a newly married couple as they try to conceive a child while co-starring on their problematic, this makes you laugh every time, of their problematic new HGTV show, Flipanthropy. That was fucking awesome. I just love that also Nathan Fielder, like, is writing a narrative show, which he hasn't done in a while, and he's, like, starring, like, he's gonna be the one married to Emma Stone, which is kind of funny to me. And then Benny Safdie is the producer of the show, apparently.
Oh, okay.
And we just saw a little picture.
That is one I'm excited for.
Yeah,
I'm definitely excited for that one.
It's gonna be interesting. I don't doubt that. That is a very what's the word? Eclectic. Like, that is an interesting group of individuals you've gathered there.
Also, just
2/3
such
of
a
which
premise
you would find in, like, art house cinema, and then Nathan Fielder.
It's also just like, it's a premise that's like 4 different things that in and of themselves are like different premises. And I'm very curious as to how those all tie together. That's gonna be fun.
I love the idea of making fun of HGTV shows. That is that's very pervasive in my house. Not the making fun of part, the insincere watching of those shows. So
well, also the idea of a problematic HGTV show. And then I like how the name implies, like, you could kind of think of a few places. Flipanthropy, like, you could think of a few places that might go where you'd be like,
I think also it didn't mention it in the synopsis, but I think it's in like a poor community, and one that is like has a specific cultural heritage that is not shared by any of those cast members. So I think that's a big part of it, is the gentrification aspect. I also like the idea that
they're gonna be flipping houses and then seemingly also like conducting ethnographic studies or something. Hence the anthropy part.
Yeah, I also like that the term problematic HGTV shows implies that there are unproblematic HGTV shows. Questionable.
And none of them are.
Exactly. We also have some trailers for you. We've seen some trailers for some things. First up, I wish I knew this. I think it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Is that correct?
I think so. I think you're correct.
This is a movie called Anatomy of a Fall, and it looks really good. It also looks a lot like Decision to Leave, ironically, but hey, sometimes that happens.
I saw that you said that, and I don't... Oh, you just mean plot-wise.
Yeah.
Oh, when you said that to me, I thought you meant like, oh, this visually and stylistically looks like Decision to Leave, and I was like, no, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't share Park Chan-wook's just like insane camera train dolly wide shot.
Yeah, zoom in from 24 to 300 millimeters across like through 3 houses, and then changing focus. Whatever. Yeah. No, I think this movie looks very Scandinavian too. And I think that's an interesting thing. Yeah.
I do like Scandinavian movies, though. That's an aesthetic I actually like a lot. But it looks good. So it kind of loosely follows a woman who is on trial for the suspicious death of her husband. It seems that she may have pushed him, which, if anyone has seen Decision to Leave, is exactly the setup for that movie.
That is the setup for that movie.
It seems a little bit less romantic, though. I'll give this movie that. But very excited to see that. It does look as good as people have been saying. Another kind of like Academy Awards type movie coming out, Maestro, by the man who brought you A Star Is Born, the 4th iteration of it, I believe. Bradley Cooper.
He's on the deep end.
He was in the deep end, and maybe he's out of the deep end.
But they're in the shallow now. Now they're in the shallow.
I will say he is back in the deep end. I don't know if you've seen this, but
I've seen the controversy around this.
Yeah. So he's playing Leonard Bernstein, a famous conductor. Leonard Bernstein was Jewish, and apparently, in order to really portray that character, Bradley Cooper decided to wear a prosthetic nose, which I could see being an offensive choice. The Bernstein kids, that sounds like Succession. The people who were working with him on it approved of it apparently, but it is, when you see like side by side comparisons, it's like, okay, Bradley, what were you hoping to achieve here?
It's also, he already doesn't look like the dude, and so it's like, why even do it? Like, no one's gonna be like, no, I don't believe you. You're not that guy. You're just that's Bradley Cooper.
Also, like the idea of like prosthetics, like it's choosing when you need to use them, and I think this is an obvious example of like, you look enough like the guy. You don't need to look. You don't need to have a spitting image replication of this conductor that I could not tell you what he looks like. He could look like Bradley Cooper for all I care.
And the only thing you modify is like the most stereotypical physical feature associated with that ethnic group. A little strange. A little strange. The one thing I will say, there's one shot in this trailer where it's like a shadow, and it's like a person is like in the shadow and it's conducting. That looked fucking awesome. I will say that. Like, I think that this trailer, this movie looks very good.
It looks very good. This is what I'm saying. If you ignore the prosthetic nose part, every other, like, visually, I was like stunned. I haven't seen A Star Is Born, any iteration of it, particularly the Bradley Cooper one. and I'm starting to think maybe I should go back and I should revisit that, because I'm thoroughly impressed. I don't know if you heard this, but apparently Spielberg was producing this, or maybe executive producing it, and Bradley Cooper was like, I want to direct it, and he said, maybe. And then he saw A Star Is Born, or he was like at like one of the earliest screenings of it or something. Yeah. And then when they left the screening, Spielberg was like, "You're doing Maestro. You've got it." And
really?
Yeah, I really like this turn for Bradley Cooper. I kind of like.
I haven't seen Star Is Born, but I am skeptical of that movie from what I have seen of it. But this one looks very different. So
it does look very different.
Nose aside.
Nose aside, it's very Tar. I want to do like a Tar back-to-back feature, double feature.
That would be punishing. I will say
it might be. It's also funny that this is a prequel for Tar. This is pre-Tar because he was claimed to be her mentor, I thought, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, maybe I don't remember.
He's in the TV when she's back at home. Yeah, looks good. I'm very excited for this movie as well, and that's being released by Netflix. Interesting. Last thing, speaking of streaming services, we have another Disney Plus original series for you.
Man, this one's sad.
Not to mention
makes me sad, dude.
Yeah, we weren't going to mention this, but also, have you seen the clips for Ahsoka?
Yeah.
So bad. It looks... I've completely given up on Star Wars.
I've seen that one review where it was like, certain people who liked Andor might not like this one. It's like, yeah, the best thing they've ever made. people who like the best Star Wars show by far.
Exactly. And that was supposed to be like an endorsement of Ahsoka, which is crazy. But what we are actually talking about now is there was I wouldn't call it a trailer, but a brief teaser perhaps for the series adaptation of Percy Jackson. Now, I was a Percy Jackson kid. I've been anticipating this for a while because everyone hated the movies and said the movies were so unfaithful. We want a proper adaptation of our beloved childhood stories. And never did I believe I would watch something that made me reminisce the movies.
See, okay.
I didn't think that was possible.
I've seen some tweets like that. I am not there. I disagree. People are forgetting those movies are truly bad. Especially the second one it's so bad. Like those are bad. And I don't even care about faithfulness. You can change tons of the book as long as it's like good. Like as long as you just make a good movie in the end, I'm completely fine with you doing that. The problem is that they made a shitty movie. They just made they made two very bad movies. But when I saw this trailer, and it's the shot of Ares walking in that landscape, I audibly went like, oh. Like, I had like a guttural reaction. I had like a very visceral reaction to that. Like, that is bad.
It's the curse of the volume. Peter actually, who was absent today, to mention that, sent us a tweet. It was a quote tweet of the tweet, the tweezer, of the teaser, of a picture, I think, of the last shot of Oppenheimer. So spoilers for that, I guess. But the last shot is, of course, him being like, "What have I done?" Kind of like this creation I've wrought on the world. And the tweet said something like, "That's Greg Fraser, like for the volume, for having created the volume. What damage have I caused on film?" Could not be more true. It's truly a terrible weapon he's unleashed.
The point of the volume is that like you can make a really nice landscape that will film there. It's just like a boring landscape. Like even beyond just it being filmed badly and not integrated well, it's just not even a fun design. And like I know the book. I have read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief in my life. I've probably read that like 8 times. So I know that book really well. And it's like I had to like really think about like where the fuck is he? Like where is this? And it's like that's like New York. That's like it's like Long Beach or Montauk or whatever it is. Montauk. That's where
they go back to Montauk for that. Well, I don't remember this at all.
Well, okay, it's wherever. I think it's wherever the fight is at the end of that book. But but it's like I was like, oh fuck, that is ugly. that does not look good.
It's not an enticing thing, I'll tell you that.
That being said, I will watch the series. Like, I think no matter what, I'm gonna watch it just because I not only read the original Percy Jackson, I also read the first one 8 times, and then I read the sequel series as well. So I read in total 10 books of that saga. I know that there were more,
but not 8 times.
But those are the ones. Not 8 times. No, that's the only one I read that many times.
Yeah. I even went so far as to watch or to read some of the other like branching off related series, but I don't think I can be convinced. Yeah, I read those ones.
Yeah.
Anyways, speaking of things that looked kind of bad CGI, could be better. We watched a movie, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Okay. And sometimes it wasn't terrible.
That's not like a standout. I actually thought, we'll get into it. Never mind.
I was trying to find a loose connection. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we watched a movie, and Aiden is going to tell us about it.
Yes, so we watched the movie Last Voyage of the Demeter. This is a horror.
You're stalling.
This is a horror.
You're stalling everyone.
Yeah,
he's not ready.
No, it's up now. This is directed by Andre Ovredal. It was written by Bragi Shutt Jr. and Zach Olkowitz. It is based on the captain's log from Bram Stoker's Dracula, which, as I understand it, is a very small portion of that book.
2 chapters.
Yes. So, cool. It's questionable, but cool. Starring Corey Hawkins, Ailing Franciosi, Liam Cunningham, and David Dasmalchian. Cinematography by Tom Stern. This has a bunch of production companies.
Stern? Like boat?
No, oh,
Stern?
Nice.
Boat.
Yeah.
Dracula's on a boat.
So, okay, moving on. Bunch of production companies on this one. It was released August 11th, 2023. Runtime of 119 minutes. It had a budget of $45 million and has currently made $9.3 million. Ooh, that's not good.
That's not good. We'll talk about how that might impact future Voyage movies, but
future Boat Dracula.
What? Okay, no, we'll talk about that later. But apparently, the one thing I found very interesting about this is this has been in development hell, sort of, or the script has for 2 decades. Bragi has been writing this since the 90s, and one would think that having had this script for 2 decades, it would be significantly better. But if The Flash and Black Adam have shown us anything, that is not the case.
This movie's way better than both of those, though.
No, I'm just saying generally. Movies long in development. Well, reminder, this one had another decade in addition to The Flash and Black Adam. It was that second decade that really got it to where it's at.
Right.
But, yes, thank you for the movie info. Now we do our classic segment. We play a game. It's called Predacritic. There's a website on the internet called Metacritic, and the scores. Critics give scores of a movie, and they're averaged out of 100. We are going to guess where The Last Voyage of the Demeter lands on that metric. And the person who's going first, it's actually really interesting who's going to go first, because who knows? It's actually up to a wheel, and the wheel is usually spun during this time. And it could really be anyone. It's
Why
really
wasn't
flip
it?
Of a coin.
Was it spun this time, or?
It's actually you. It actually has been spun, and it is you who is going first, who is guessing first. What do you think the score of this movie is?
So off rip, I'm thinking somewhere 60-ish.
Off rip? Off rip? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Right off the bat, yeah.
Off rip?
Okay.
No, see, off the bat is a real thing.
No, off rip is a real thing. Off the dome is real. Off rip, immediately right away. Look it up. Owned. You got owned with facts and logic.
Urban Dictionary says, no, that's not the one I wanted to read. To drink, eat an item directly out of the container. Off rip.
Yeah,
okay,
just look up. Okay, whatever. Okay, so yeah, I'm thinking around 60. I think that I'll get it. I'll talk more about my personal feelings on this movie when we get into the spoiler review. But I think that this is kind of an average movie in a lot of ways, and I think that critics will like the things that are good about it and will not have high expectations for it, so will not be super upset about the things that are not as good about it. That's my logic. I'm going smack at 60.
Mm. I could feel this being a 60s movie. The question is higher or lower? I don't have... This is kind of revealing my thoughts, but I don't really have a lot of faith in this movie. Something this movie wishes its characters had more of. I know I have a feeling that critics are going to be mean, so I'll go with 59. I'll sort of play the game, I suppose, in a way. Let's find out. The last voyage of the Demeter.
That Demeter, always voyaging.
Demeter. And sometimes my wisdom pays off. It is in fact even lower than 59. It is 52, which I think is closer to what I was expecting in my heart of hearts. But now, having played the game, the winner of this game gets to give their non-spoiler reactions first. This is, of course, me in this case. So I watched this movie. Dracula on a boat was a pretty funny meme, but this was not a fun movie to watch. I did, fun story, watch this in a movie theater by myself. There was not a single other person in the theater.
That's awesome.
It was 10 o'clock at night when it started, and I was a little bit scared. Not because the movie was particularly scary. The trailers were a little more unnerving, but just the vibe of being in a theater completely empty and always kind of turning around and being like, did anyone enter? Is there a boat
Dracula? Did the boat Dracula become a land Dracula?
Holy shit, there's a boat behind me. What? No, I was just getting worried that someone will have entered the theater after me and is going to surprise me. It's not the fear of a Dracula or even a boat Dracula appearing, but I was a little bit scared. But then the movie did not sustain this very well. I didn't find it particularly scary. It's a fine movie. It's okay. I didn't find it particularly riveting. I found it really boring, actually, which was disappointing. I think the setup is a pretty neat idea to take a small part of a larger story and really kind of dive into that. I think so. So the concept of Dracula on a boat is ripe with opportunity, and I don't think this movie uses that opportunity particularly well. I don't think the characters are very interesting. I think they could have been a little bit better. They tried. It was clear they tried. There were some interesting moments here and there, I think, but not really enough to sway me too greatly. David Dastmalchian is he is an actor. He is very good, and so I liked watching him for an hour and a half. But Boat Dracula didn't really do a lot for me. It looks fine. It looks pretty good. I'll give it that. The cinematography isn't too bad. So I think I gave it on Letterboxd a 2 out of 5. And yeah, I'm not gonna tell people to go watch Boat Dracula. But them's my thoughts.
Yeah, so while I don't think this is certainly not going to be high in my favorite movies of the year, to me this is what movies are about. I wish. See,
this is I knew you would take this angle. Yeah.
I want movies like this to come out all the time because this is what I want to see. I think that this is a movie of many missed opportunities. I agree the setup is potentially interesting. There are even specific things they set up in the movie and do not pay off, which is strange to me. Because to me, it's clear that was where you were going and you just didn't do it for some reason. I think there are some... This is a movie, this is something I want to talk about. This is in the general subgenre of supernatural horror where characters are stuck in an isolated place with a unbeatable kind of monster. You think Alien, The Thing, Predator, whatever. All these movies are some.
It's the same.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I don't even think you can say it's just Alien. There are tons of movies that are this specific premise. It's almost like a subgenre of itself. And I want to talk about why I think those movies work a lot better. And so there are specific things with how the conflict develops that I think are pretty problematic. I really like, and I don't mean like cancel it, I just mean it's not done super well. But I like, I agree that the characters aren't as fleshed out as they could be, but I like that we actually got like a merry band of quirky characters. That's something that I don't think we see that often, where there's actually not much characterization at all. And I like that characters actually were very distinct. Like I knew exactly who they were talking about and like what the deal was generally with everyone. That's cool. I like that.
Cool.
There are some other problems I have with the character though. I think that it's a pretty basic cinematography style, but I actually think that this is not a super high budget movie, and I actually think that they made some smart decisions with, particularly around CG, and also, this is a movie where you probably want somewhat realistic light sources, and I think that they did a good job of lighting scenes in such a way that didn't get too dark, but also had like a motivated light that made sense. I liked the shallow focus, but we'll get into that a little bit more. So I would give this movie 3 stars. I would recommend it. I think that the average moviegoer would have fun with this. I think that it's like, this is just like a fun kind of movie. I like the gore. I like the kills. There are moments where I went like, whoa! And that's what I want. That's what I want to do. This is 3 stars. I would recommend it.
Very cool. Now, seeing as you have lost the Predacritic Game, you also have a great burden. You have to summarize this movie in 2 minutes. We will give a spoiler warning as well.
Pew, 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 pew. That's your spoiler alarm. Wee, wee.
You've been warned. And you are now going to tell us what happens in this movie in 2 minutes. You ready for this?
I sure am.
Okay, here you go. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Okay, so we start, there's a boat, and they're transporting stuff from Transylvania. Woo, boxes from Transylvania, it's going on this boat. They're looking for crew members. There's this doctor from England who is like, take me on. He saves a kid, and that, like, proves his worth, and he's on. And so he's part of the crew. They set off. Turns out pretty early on, there's a girl that they find who's like a stowaway, and they're like, what the heck? And so there's like controversy over like, should we kill her or no? They don't. The doctor's doing blood transfusions. Every single night people are dying, and the crew is like, well, that's fucked. Like, people are dying, but we don't want to pull over because we want to get our bonus from the people that we're delivering this to. As the movie goes on, more people are dying night by night. We learn a little bit more about what's going on. The girl springs to life and says that the demon's on board, and they start to slowly kind of believe that the devil is on board. And then we start to, at a certain point, they realize there is in fact a boat Dracula on board who is killing people. When he sucks their blood, they're kind of psychically linked and possessed by him. And so that's a little bit of a problem. They eventually devise the plan that they're going to sink the Demeter, which is the name of the boat, so as to kill Dracula, and then try to escape on the safety boat to shore once they are near England, which is where it was being shipped to initially. Because Dracula apparently has sucked everyone's blood in his home country, is the explanation we get. Kind of insane. I don't believe that. But anyway, turns out Dracula can fly. Oh no, boat Dracula can fly, so it doesn't even really work that well. The ship winds up sinking anyway. Everyone fucking dies, pretty much, other than main guy and girl. But then girl also dies because she had been bitten, and like the blood transfusions only delayed it. At the end, we have the doctor guy who made it to England. He's in a bar, and he sees Boat Dracula in the bar, and he vows to hunt down Boat Dracula for the rest of his days.
Except he's not on a boat anymore. He's land.
Except
Dracula
he's not Boat
now.
Dracula. Yeah, he is like trench coat Dracula at this point.
He looks like Jack the Ripper, and I'm wondering. Well, we'll get into that, but like potential.
I would like to see that.
I would very much appreciate that, actually. Okay, so to start off our spoiler discussion, actually, I do remember what we usually do. Favorite part? Did you have?
Oh, we do. There are a few things I like. So yeah, one of the things that I legitimately really like, one of my favorite parts, is when the crew first sits down for their full meal together, and they're just like talking, and we are introduced to the quirks of these different characters. I actually think it's quite a nice scene. I think that like the characters are very distinctive in this scene, and we see that they're different types of fellas, and we see that they have different perspectives on things, and every time that they are referenced for the remainder of the movie, because of this scene, I actually have a decent idea of where they're at, who they are, how they're going to feel about the things that happen. And that's a nice thing. I legitimately think you don't get that in a lot of modern movies. So that's nice. Another favorite part I had is just, it's a very small thing. It's one of the kills when Dracula is flying and he like knocks a guy out of the air. I was like, ooh! That was a nice one. That's near the end. So those are two.
Those are two good parts. I do agree with you that sometimes movies, the characterization isn't clear and they're just kind of like stock man, woman, whatever, you know? And I did feel that pretty much every single character, and especially the main kind of characters, were very distinct. I'm struggling to think. I didn't actually like pick out one, so I'm struggling to think of a part that I was like really wowed by. If anything, maybe, yeah, I like this part. I liked when the kid died.
Yeah,
but
no, when they're trying to tip him.
Yes, yeah. So specifically when
I
he's
like that.
he's post-mortem, he's already dead. Which, by the way, when they killed the kid, I was like, bold. I was like, good on you, movie, for kind of surprising me and for not like.
Although the scene in which he dies is very confusing. I don't know if you felt the same way.
It was really stupid. Some of the. Oh, God. Okay. So. But the fact that they killed the kid was a bold move, and I thought that was actually very interesting that they did that. But the scene that
fairly early too. It wasn't like in the climax.
Yes. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah, this is true. I like that he's dead, but it's daytime. It's daytime.
Yeah.
Not a lot of daytime in this movie, and I actually really like how daytime looks in this movie. I think they did a really nice job of making daytime. And it's the captain's grandson is the boy who has died, and he's obviously distraught about this. And he's wrapped up in a sheet, and there's like a moment where he moves, and he's like, he's alive, don't kill my boy. And they're like, no, man, he's dead. And then he unveils the sheets, and I'm like, no, you can't do this, because obviously he's a vampire. And then I thought Captain was gonna get bit, and then that would be a thing. Luckily, that didn't happen for the Captain, but the kid did become a marshmallow in a fire. He did burn to a crisp. Also, like, horribly burning the Captain, which I think was really cool for them to do that as well. So that was fun. That was a moment of like really strong characterization, and also like really palpable consequences for poor decision making, and how also just like stress and well, in this case grief as well, kind of like breed irrationality, I suppose, and not great decision making. So I think that was a really good scene. I liked.
Yeah, what I really like about that scene is, you've touched on this a little bit, and I think it stands out because the rest of the movie doesn't do this very much, where it's like a different problem that they have to encounter that is a result of things they've already seen. So people get bitten, and then they become these kind of like walking like zombified vampire things that are kind of controlled by Dracula, right? And so the logical place to go to that is like confusion and like not wanting it to die and believing that like your grandson is still in there. And so I think like it's a good escalation of that idea. And I think one of my problems with this movie is that it doesn't escalate on its ideas very much. Like, so for example, when vampires hit the sunlight, they are burned alive. The boat is wooden. Like, this could be a big problem. Like, the first time that we see someone being burned alive, I was like, oh, they're gonna have to deal with this, and they're gonna have to have this specific problem to deal with, which is something this movie is lacking, and it doesn't happen. This movie needs more of little things that the characters do in order to try and ultimately survive and defeat Dracula. and it doesn't have much of that. And this scene is an example of that happening, where it's a little problem that arises as a result of one of Dracula's powers.
It's also very funny. I didn't think about that while watching the movie, but it's actually quite hilarious in hindsight that you brought this up. The idea that Dracula plus sun equals fire, fire plus wood equals bad. Like the idea, like that's so obvious that people would really understand that, and yet the movie doesn't do that, but makes such a like important point about how wooden the ship is. They're like, oh, wood is great. I love my wooden ship. And they're like, you see, this is a special quality of the wood, which the boat is made of, by the way. And they're like knocking on the wood, and all wood is great. And it's just like, okay, so the boat is made of wood. I wonder if that's important. Maybe for that reason, or also, this is only occurring to me now, but like, one of the ways to kill Dracula, a wooden stake through the heart. Where better to get a wooden stake than a boat full of wood?
And
very strange though.
So that ties into another problem I have. But another interesting idea based off the fire thing, another thing that they've brought up, they've specifically called attention to, is the point of navigation. The doctor early in the movie says when you move, you can lose like a compass or a map, but you can navigate with the stars. One would assume that they're going to become wayward and lost. And so, like, imagine, okay, guy is tied to the mast, or like the pole in the thing, I don't know what it's called, sets on fire. They have to chop that off so it goes into the ocean. They are sent astray, and they, in dealing with different problems, find out that they are lost, not until nighttime when the doctor realizes that they're nowhere close to where they thought they should be. Like, and like that's, you see how like there's a build there of like the different things, like, and this movie's severely lacking that. It's just the same problem like the whole time that just doesn't change.
And then then they're off course, and then he's like, I don't know where we are, I'll use the stars. And then he goes, oh no, guys, we're on Dracula Island. We found Dracula Island. Oh, no.
Exactly.
That would have been a very interesting movie, and now I want to do Dracula Island. But
this was his plan all along.
The last voyage of the Demeter is a secret pilot for Dracula Island. But no, what you said about how the movie is the same all the time, that's exactly my problem. Is this movie decides what it is that at night there are going to be two people on board, like on the deck, and they're going to be like, what was that? Oh, there's a sound. And then they're going to get killed by Dracula. That plays out 2 or 3 times, and it's the same every time. And very little variation to that.
Yeah, the problem is, like, they take too long to believe it. Like, there's one line in particular that I laughed. Me and my mom, I saw this with my parents. Me and my mom laughed out loud, like, at the same time on this. When, like, they see that, like, a guy's clearly been bitten and, like, mauled. And it's like, okay, there's something here. And they've already learned, like, the girl says, oh, there's a demon on board. And they mention that. And David Desmalchian's character says, that could have been anything. And me and my mom both were like, it's clearly something. Like, you don't have to leap to the devil. Like, you can think it's anything else, but there's clearly something that's biting people on board. Like, what do you... Like, okay, yeah, and so to tie into what you're saying, I was compared this movie to movies like Alien and The Thing and that sort of thing in my non-spoiler review, and I'm going to use terms that Alien writer Dan O'Bannon has described in order to critique this movie a little bit.
We had to read that book.
We did have to read that book.
Were in a course.
It's a very good book, though. I would actually highly recommend that to anyone.
I did like that book.
But so he defines something called dynamic conflict, in which he talks about how instead of thinking about it as protagonist and antagonist, and like it's like a sort of movement where protagonist tries to move forward, gets stopped, tries to move forward, gets stopped, they gets picked off one by one, very linear sort of thing. Instead, he talks about having dueling antagonists and having the characters like trying different things to get at each other. And so there's none of that in this movie. Mm-hmm. And so like the characters do not try to do anything to defeat Dracula, like they until like the end. And it's like, and it's the most drastic action. It's the action of, we need to sink the boat. And I think that's a good instinct of, that's where that needs to go. I think that's a good incorporation of the fact that they're on a boat. I think, but you need to have build up, and it's so bizarre. There are multiple things that are very bizarre about this movie and the way it's built up. One of them being, they don't learn anything. Like, so again, going back to the fire thing, they see that the guy who's been bitten gets burned up, and then later they learn where Dracula's coffin is. Why not try to bring the coffin out into the sun? And then you can have another moment where, say, they're like, okay, you ready? And then they open it, Dracula's not there. And it's like a problem, and the sun is setting, and then it's night, and they don't know what's happening, and their attempt didn't work. Like, if you think about a movie like Alien is somewhat distant in my memory, so I'd be struggling to come up with specific examples, but I saw The Thing somewhat recently. That's a movie where they try a bunch of things to defeat the thing, and it's like, okay, that kind of worked. They do the blood test at one point, and they learn that they can use blood to identify who is the thing and who's a real person. That works, but it leads to this different conflict, and this other conflict makes them do this, and they react this way, and it's this back and forth motion where the thing reacts to what they did, and so the thing gets rid of the blood samples, it like destroys them, and then the characters have to react to that, and it's this thing that builds up together like a double helix kind of. And this movie doesn't have that. It's just Dracula is this force that they don't even really acknowledge for most of the movie, and they don't try anything to beat him.
The characters are just allergic to like defending themselves. They just assume that they know there's a problem, that every animal on board has been mauled by something, and then they're just like okay with that, and they're not like, they don't actually try to find the source. They don't try particularly hard. They have a lot of cargo. It takes them a long time to even think that it could be something in the cargo, that maybe there's someone hiding on the cargo. Like, you'd also think that they would start turning on each other like a little more than they did. They turn on each other like a very shallow way. They're like, maybe it was you, and then they're like, no, it wasn't, and they're like, no, you're probably right. Probably wasn't you.
And the thing is, I can understand if they don't go that route, because it's a little absurd where it's like, okay, a person didn't do this. Like, unless one of you secretly has fangs, like, you didn't do this. Like,
but you could come up with like,
sure,
a thing because the idea is you've got this character who is sworn to rationality and who will refuse to believe that there's a Dracula. There's still like, almost certainly, it's one of two things, really. It's either a scary animal or a human who is using some weird tech. And like, not like tech, like a tool. Like, if you had think of Wolverine's claws, if you had that, but something that you, or like a bear trap
kind of contraption, like sort of
something, you know, there are rational explanations, but they don't even take those seriously to like actually try. I read a review by David Eilrich, I think, on Letterboxd.
Oh, okay.
And what the final thing he writes before he puts the link to his actual article is like, they don't even try to look for him in the daytime. Like they completely squander daytime, and they they have an expert on Dracula on board.
Yes,
it takes her a while to be revived, but like, if we know how Dracula works, I feel like we could get past a lot of these kind of silly things. Or if you decide that we don't know how Dracula works, like slowly learning how he works and the rules, that's a thing, and they do neither of those things.
Yes, there needs to be some function in which we learn about the characters learn about Dracula, and we need to learn what the rules of Dracula are. That's a different point, but I want to touch on the character, the girl who is the stowaway, and is like, she's there because Dracula's been feeding off of her, and so her function in the script really is to be the knowledge dispenser, is to know things about Dracula and tell them things so that they can try them. Even if those things don't work, that doesn't really matter. It just moves the plot and escalates things. However, when there is a scene in this movie where the main character's like, how do we kill this guy? And she's like, how the fuck should I know? It's like, okay, so she doesn't know anything about him, and then she does. Like, later in the movie, it turns out she does actually know some things about him. It's like, well, you should have shared that earlier, and then they could have tried different things.
It's interesting because you're completely right about the role she fills. There's I forget if it was no, I think it was Save the Cat actually does this one. We're just really referencing screenwriting books, but part of the things of like monster in the house type stories, which this is one, Alien, all the ones you mentioned are monster in the house stories. One of the classic tropes is character who is survivor of the monster, who knows the rules. So Jaws has that, I forget his name, but like the captain who's seen the shark before. I'm not sure if there was one in Alien, I can't remember. Actually, I think the robot might be one. Doesn't matter. This is a classic trope, and it's so strange that like this is a character, even if she doesn't like know how to kill him, this is like basically folklore from her village, but also like clearly real life.
She should have some right, but it's like, and even if the folklore is wrong, that's an interesting development of she's like, well, they say in my village that you can stake him through the heart, and then maybe they can do like a subversion of the Dracula mythos where they say, no, you actually can't do that, it's not a thing. Fine, well, that's fine.
An example of that is the cross seems to have no effect on him, which I thought I thought that was a thing, and that is, if that had been set up as like religion can save you from him, and then it doesn't work, that's really interesting. But it's only presented as something that doesn't work, and we're not really supposed to believe, except based on maybe knowledge we bring into the movie, that it wouldn't work, or that it should work.
This ties into one of my other points, which is about Dracula rules, and that isn't to say Dracula rules, although he kind of does. I like
which
Dracula.
Which is what I thought, and also
he's pretty cool.
Movies. These days, it does seem Dracula rules. We have Renfield. Chloe Zhao's making that vampire movie. There's
example. The Nosferatu. Eggers, Nosferatu,
Dracula rules.
But yes, so somewhat early in this movie, we should get a sense of what he can do, or what it is rumored that he can do. And I know that this movie could do something really interesting where Dracula is enshrined in public consciousness, and so the average consumer of the movie knows a certain amount about Dracula. And so pressing those rules, reminding us of certain things, calling our attention to different things, subverting it here, enforcing it there, later in the movie, would be a very interesting thing to do. And then I also think there's a similar thing with boat travel they could do, but I'll let you go.
It's like The Witch, a classic example you like to bring up, where the best witch movie in decades, maybe ever, is because someone did a lot of research on witch folklore. And you kind of see it in this movie. I think the bit about the dirt was interesting. They don't really mention it, and so that's something that I know about it, actually because of the TV show What We Do in the Shadows, funny enough. But,
it has to be dirt from his homeland, right?
That's how he has to live. So he needs the dirt. But we never address it. It's never a thing. And like just talking about it now, I'm like, obviously a really like a potential solution is get the dirt off the boat. If you know that dirt is a thing, like don't tease things that don't matter, you know?
Yeah.
I think that would have been really interesting. They try to shovel the dirt off the boat, and then he has to do something about it. And it's again that idea of dynamic conflict. Trying things, it's working, but because he is not a static character either, Dracula, he is going to also try things to survive longer. And they just don't do that.
And you can still do that in such a way that he has the upper hand the entire time, and every attempt winds up being somewhat futile, because Alien is like that, and The Thing is like that, where they're gaining an inch and losing a mile every time. But that inch is very important.
These guys have guns. They've had guns the whole movie, and they bring them out at the end only.
And when they shoot Dracula, it deters him a little bit. Yeah. Like it legitimately, it works. It doesn't kill him, but it does something. Like
have we not considered ballistic warfare yet? Why is that the last thing to come up? That's
Yeah.
like the first option. When you like they're on duty in pairs, knowing there's something hunting them, and they don't have guns yet, right? They don't bring.
It's not until like this. I think it's the second night, the second time they're patrolling. I think then they.
Oh,
then
they have guns then?
I remember the captain says everyone should be armed. Like we're doing it. Everyone's gonna be armed. So there is that, but then it doesn't matter because no one fires it. It's like the Chekhov's gun thing where, yeah, whatever. But I also wanted to touch upon the thing you said where don't tease things that don't wind up mattering. And this also ties into my idea of navigation earlier. We, through film language, and I mean an insert, close-up insert, are introduced to the fact that it is very important that someone is steering the ship and has either their hands on the wheel or they tie a rope so that it doesn't move. So, ostensibly, that's important. Like, the steering of the boat. Like, again, another simple idea. In having to deal with Dracula, the wheel spins and no one's there, and then they get lost off course. Like, it's just like another thing of, like, I just feel like it was so obvious that... You know, like, it's in that subgenre of Monster in the House. They're in an isolated situation, but it's better if you specifically add in the environment that they're in. And an interesting wrinkle of that is, well, you can get lost at sea. You can wind up being anywhere. And like, it's so weird. I don't think that they don't go over enough what is important about a boat and like what are the requirements of the environment there. Another example I have is towards the end when they're talking about, and this is kind of me being dumb because once it happened I was like, right, obviously. But when they're planning on sinking it, they just have an axe in their hand, and I was like, what are they gonna do? What does that mean? like, and I just feel like, yeah, I don't know. So maybe that was just me being dumb because like, yeah, obviously when you puncture a boat it sinks, but like, I don't know. I felt like there should have been some more attention of what is necessary for the upkeep and the ultimate safe arrival of this boat. And again, then you can subvert and reinforce that wherever you want.
Yeah. Speaking of boat rules, something that I thought would play more into this is at one point the characters are like, we are like out of food. All the animals have been slaughtered. And then that's just not a thing, that they are not starving.
By the end of the movie, they're like, we're a day away. And it's like, oh, okay.
You're fine. Yeah. So I think a more interesting movie would have really... So not only do we not have food, we also... I'm just referring to my notes somewhere. Oh, no, where should I put it? So there's food deprivation, or hunger, we'll call it, right? There's mistrust. There's new people on the crew we don't know. There's also stowaways, and there's maybe racism. I'm not sure if that was a problem on the boat. It was implied as part of the backstory. A little bit? Okay.
Yeah, there's a point where a character says derogatory thing. It's one scene, but yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like racism, but like it's not around when it's not convenient, you know, like it's only like you put it in the scene to make it part of a thing, and then we'll just drop it. And I think that was kind of lame.
I actually think it's integrated into his character well, though. I think that his experience with racism and how that makes sense with his worldview actually makes a lot of sense, and I think it's actually well tied in. Yeah. So we have mistrust, maybe racism, hunger, and then also if they start realizing that Dracula is up at night and maybe we should not be sleeping at night. Yeah.
Sleep deprivation. And also just like also maybe you don't feel like sleeping during the day either because spooky monster on board, whatever. That's like a perfect catalyst, like a crucible for tension on this boat where you just can't get away. Yeah. And we do nothing with it. No one's like, this is one of those things where like people should be going nuts. They should be going cuckoo bananas, and we don't have any cuckoo banana people.
Yeah, again, in the thing, one of the guys immediately loses his mind and breaks all the communication devices so that they can't contact anyone, and like destroys their transportation methods like immediately. And And it's like the movie needs more of that. Yeah.
There should have been someone who, like, was like really, really, truly believed that it was the Doctor the whole time. I think is another thing. There should have been someone who was like, no, it's this guy for sure, because that's immediately more attention. You know, lock him up, put him away, and then that's trouble for Doctor Guy as being stuck in like the brig. And also just like this movie doesn't use daylight hours almost ever. Daylight seems like a passing event when you'd think most of the attempt should be there to try and find him, or
and you can do an interesting thing like where
unpresent.
Another component of a boat is that above deck there is the sun, but below deck there is very little sunlight, and so potentially Dracula could actually navigate during the day under the deck, and maybe that's something that Dracula is forced to do, where like he's like, oh fuck, these guys are gonna kill me if I sleep during the day, and so I need to operate during the night. That would be an interesting problem for Dracula to try to solve.
Yeah,
but the movie doesn't treat it like that. Another quick boat rules thing is the lifeboat that they have that we don't. It has not been focused on until someone uses it, which is not good. We need to know that that's an option, and people need to be talking about, fuck this, I'm getting off the boat. I'm taking the lifeboat right now. Fuck this, I'm out of here. Like, that needs to happen, and they need to do it. And what I will say, though, okay, so it's a negative and a positive. The positive is that I like that the boat comes right back, and so we are presented with, that's not an option. But they don't learn that. Their plan that they wind up conceiving doesn't account for that. They saw that one of their crew members tried to leave on the safety boat, probably died because it's covered in blood and it came right back. And then they try it again anyway. Like their plan hinges upon them having the lifeboat at the end while Dracula sits at shore. What they should learn from this is that Dracula is not confined to the boat. And so like their final plan doesn't really make sense with that knowledge.
There's a lot of things. I don't love the idea that Dracula is not confined to the boat. I guess as an idea of like, here's a creature that is unstoppable, has kind of like wide-ranging powers. That is as in the plus column. I do think it's a little silly, but
I think that they should do like a limited flight thing at least. Like they should be like, oh, his wings are torn up or something, and so he can do this and that, but he couldn't literally fly off the boat to England if he wanted to.
Why couldn't he fly to London? That's what I asked.
Yeah.
And there's no reason he couldn't from what we see.
Right.
Also, just like I have it in my head that the dead can't cross over water, and that's maybe not a vampire one, but that's something that's always in my mind. And like, I don't know if you could do that. That's usually more for Sleepy Hollow and sometimes zombies, but I'm getting too nerdy about this. I will say that you'd think that the lifeboat disappearing is enough, and just have it gone and just be like, oh, he's left us. They don't have to know that he died. They just need to know that that is an option that is gone now because somebody looked out for themselves instead of the greater good of the crew.
Yeah, I actually think it's a stronger character moment for Dracula, though, that he sent the boat back to... No, I'm being serious. Like, I think
he sent it back? I didn't see it as that. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, I think that's what's implied, because the boat's going in one direction, and then suddenly it's coming back, right? So, like, I think the implication is that Dracula specifically sent the boat back to the boat to show them, yeah, this is here, you can use it, it's not gonna fucking work, though. Like I think that's actually a stronger beat than boat is just gone, because you still have the betrayal, you still have someone in our group decided to betray the group, but then you also have the Dracula moment as well.
Yeah.
So I like that in concept too.
Also, what even happens to it? Does it get? It just disappears. We don't see it ever again.
I think they somehow get it back on the main boat, unless they had a different one. Like they had another lifeboat.
Do they use it again? Is what I'm asking. I don't. When is it again?
It's there again when they're trying to leave at the end. The main doctor tells the girl, "Yeah, lower the boat, like lower the lifeboat," and the lifeboat is there.
Okay, I forgot. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if there's another one, and then I believe they wind up drifting away on the wreckage of the lifeboat. Oh, that's also there's a bad filmmaking moment in that final thing. I'll just say it now, but it's like, yeah, so maybe you didn't experience this, but it's very unclear to me. Like, so what happens is they are both a la Jack and Rose are hugging this piece of drift road, except they are both attached to it and they're both fine. They're both kind of drifting. The shore isn't that far away. Vampire girl reveals that she is a vampire and thus wants to die. Girl. Yeah. And so what happens is she gets on a different part of the wreckage and then floats away from him. And he floats to the shore while she goes out and burns up. This was very confusing to me. First of all, this looked to me like one solid piece of wreckage that could not be set apart from the other one. So it's weird to just suddenly do that without like an insert or something of her specifically severing the two pieces or whatever it is. Like, that works. There's also a very, very wide high angle shot of her drifting off where we cannot see him in relation to it. And I was like, is he on that too? Like, because I didn't understand. Okay. I didn't understand that they had severed the wreckage. That didn't make sense to me with the filmmaking. And so I thought he was just on the same piece where she was burning up because it's so wide that I couldn't see. And then it cuts to him on a different piece, but the shot is so tight that we can't see her in relation to him. And so it's like, where are these things in relation to each other and what is happening? I really struggled with that last part. It wasn't until like she started burning where I was like, oh, okay, they're separated. She's drifting this way, he's drifting that way. But we need something that establishes that, and there's nothing.
Yeah, I'll say I didn't experience that one specifically, but sometimes the spatial continuity or no, it was more for me shot choice. Just sometimes where like we cut to wides, and I would always ask why like it feels so much more tense when you're with the character. It's like comedy goes wide and horror goes close is kind of like the general rule. And so often I was just like, I feel so much less tense if I can see, if I'm quite distanced from the character. I don't feel for them anymore. I also
it's also that you can see that they're not in danger. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if you're so close to their perspective and you're kind of like only seeing their POV sometimes, like I think, so just some choices were not the strongest in terms of directing the camera, I think. Something that we can also talk about for the monster in the house type thing is I think those movies, well, okay, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but this movie decides to be more about gore and like an intense like action leaping about vampire. And I think that in theory can work. It's not something that I would like aesthetically, like I find other kind of more implied violence more interesting, but I think also the execution wasn't great. I think the Dracula leaping about was a little goofy sometimes, kind of reminded me of like the werewolf from Harry Potter kind of thing. And even more than that, what was actually really disappointing was that clearly the movie was going for gore some of the time. Like the first couple kills, I was like, oh, this is more gory than I was expecting. And then does nothing with that. Doesn't go for gore most of the other times. And in fact, there's one particular bit that I found actually quite funny when the guy who turns into the zombie, I don't know what his name is, but they're like looking for him and they're like, where is he? What happened? And the kid, like blood starts dripping on his face and you're like, and all the characters start slowly looking up, and I'm expecting to see like the most horribly mangled human you've ever seen in your life, and he has a head wound. He's got a little scratch on his forehead, and it like if that's not what you wanted to do with that character in that moment, fine. But I just found that they were setting up an expectation of gore that they did not hold on to, and if it's not gore, and if the if we see the creature early on, it's not about the suspense of what the creature looks like. There's a point where I'm like, what about this is scary? It turns into like, this creature will probably kill you. Like, that's what the fear is from, because we see him in full a lot of the time, and maybe he's supposed to look a little creepy, but for a horror film, did not find it particularly scary. I think they could have done that better.
No, I didn't find it particularly scary either, and I agree that they could have gone harder on the horror. The gore?
The gore.
Yeah, the gore. They definitely could have gone harder on the gore. However, I disagree about the movement of Dracula and the way he's moving around. I like the design of the Dracula character quite a bit, actually. I think it's quite fun, and I think it's one of the stronger points of this movie, actually. I think that they do a clever thing of, again, this isn't a super high budget movie, and I think that they hide the CGI with lighting well, where he is in darkness, but he's not like so pitch black that you can't see anything. There's like enough of him that's illuminated, but it's also dark enough that they can hide maybe rougher CGI that, you know, it's harder to animate something that's in broad daylight and you can see everything. Yeah. And so I liked that, and I like the way his face looks. I actually like his whole kind of bat-like design. I like the way he flies around. So I actually quite like that, and I think that these movies like really lend themselves well to really fucked up gore, and I agree that this movie needs to do more of that. Like, you think The Thing, that movie's super gory. That movie goes you like crazy images of like, there's the famous chest belly opening with the teeth thing, like that's fucked up, and then the guy's hands come off, like that's crazy. Alien is super gory, like the way people die in Alien is really brutal, and so I think that is a really good direction to take it. I agree that they need to do more with it, though. I also do think that the Dracula reveal is perhaps a bit unceremonious. I don't mind seeing Dracula early. I just think that it needs to be more like, oh, we're seeing glimpses of him here and there. There's actually a really nice part where the doctor is like looking from the other end of the boat, and he can't quite tell. He's like kind of squinting, and we just see kind of the silhouette of what at that point looks like a man-shaped thing, like who's like, but it's a little off, and it's like, so he's not sure, and it's nighttime. That I quite like, and I wish that there was a bit more of that, and then a really good just reveal of this is Dracula, and that can be early, like that's fine with me. And then I agree, after that point he needs to be a bit more brutal.
Yeah. What else can we talk about? Let's talk about characters. This is just kind of random jumping around, but we talked about some of the good things about characters, but I do have some nitpicks, let's call them, about character. I did find that the Doctor lead character Clemens, I think there was something about him where I was not ever fully invested, and I could feel the attempts to make me invested. I think the idea of he's got a very clear worldview, which I think you outlined, in that he's trying to make sense of the world, and it has to do with the racism he's experienced. But there was just something lacking in how that coalesces, I guess. Maybe it's in the dynamics of the character. Maybe I guess he does have his save the cat moment. He's saved the kid who dies later, but I don't know, maybe you want to talk about it, but like, I didn't really care enough. And maybe it's just a lack of like giving him enough to do, where it's a lot of talk and walking around and reacting to what's happening. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is.
My problem is not a characterization thing. I think it literally is that, where we just need to see him take more substantive action for him to be our main hero. Yeah, and even if that isn't like, again, I mean, I'm broken record, but in The Thing, like Kurt Russell's character, like immediately tries to take charge and does different things. Ripley tries a bunch of different things in Alien. Like, she takes substantive action because of these, because of the threat. And I think that's what it is. I actually don't think you need any more in terms of characterization. I think that if you look at the other movies within this kind of subgenre, they don't really. Like, you really don't delve more into the characters than what we got in this. And I think it's kind of unnecessary. One thing I really like actually is how, like, this movie like draws a comparison between like religion and rationality, and how like they're kind of similar. And so like, because even though he's a very like scientifically minded person, he has faith, and like this is a question of faith for him. Like he has faith in the idea that everything can be explained, and everything in the universe, if through scientific progress, can be discovered rationally, or can be explained rationally. And then I also like that he has some doubt, and there are some things where he's like, I just don't get it. Like I just, but everywhere I go, it just seems to get more strange. Like I like that it's not just a one note thing, and I like that it ultimately says that it's faith. Like he has faith in this idea in the same way that other characters have faith in Jesus and whatever. Like I think that that's an interesting thing. There are other religious references I think are fun. Like I like that. I really really like when Dracula strings up the guy in a cruciform position, like to spite them. Like I like that Dracula's kind of catty in this movie, and he's like,
he
yeah,
is.
fuck it. Like
yeah,
like, and I think that's great. I think that it's really fun that this idea of sacrifice. I forget exactly who it even is. Oh, it's the captain, because the captain's gonna sacrifice himself, and he is tied up in the cruciform position, which is like a symbol for sacrifice. He was going to sacrifice for the greater good of the crew, and Dracula's like, yeah, fuck you. Like like it's just a spitting in their beliefs moment. And I think that there's a certain level of Dracula is a threat to the order of the universe, which is a very conventional horror concept, and I really like that. And I like that it's tied into the idea of both rationality and Christianity as being almost kind of the same thing in this movie, and Dracula is a threat to both of them. And I think that I like that quite a bit.
It's interesting, yeah, the idea of like the threat to the universe. I don't know if is there a part where they're like, we have to save the people of London? Is that a thing? I can't remember.
That's a bit of yeah.
Okay.
There is a.
I feel like
I think it should be
that
emphasized more, but
yeah. I think
there's
for someone who's like a doctor too, like I feel like that idea, and being like, no, we need to destroy this ship so that he doesn't just go ham on the modern world, you know?
Because that's like a classic. So many movies in this subgenre do that too.
And it's and I really like when they do that too. But I will say.
But what I meant, to be clear though, I actually didn't mean a threat to. I didn't mean a literal threat to the world. I meant to, in the sense that he's
death, kind of thing.
Sort of. I mean that he's transgressive and he doesn't fit the laws, and so his existence is a threat because it defies explanation and it defies established order. Because that's like the essential function of so many horror movies, where it's like there is the world and there is the order, and then there's this interloper whose existence cannot be explained in it. And so either like the logic of horror is that either he needs to be destroyed or the world is corrupted or whatever. Like, and that's like essentially what's at stake in a lot of horror movies anyway.
Stake, get it, vampire. I also think that the idea of rationality, logic and reason versus religion and superstition, I really think they could have played that up by like 50% or more. I think the character Clemens, I feel like his rationality isn't, and like insistence on there being a rational explanation is not given enough screen time, I guess. Partially again because he is a character who does not try to solve the problem. And I think if he was trying to solve the problem, we would see some of the rationality play out more. Like, what this is more likely to be than a vampire. And a point where, like, I don't know, when we have to solve the vampire problem, or maybe he thinks it's something else. You know, he doesn't think it couldn't be magic, but I know I saw it.
There's a little bit of that. Yeah. So he thinks it's rabies at first. He thinks one of the animals got rabies and did that to the other animals, which makes sense. Like I believe that is like a starting place that he might go. I agree that it should. To me, what the problem is, my problem with the characters is actually that we have this really fun characterization, and then they all kind of drop out, and they mostly drop out because shit isn't happening, and they don't have anything to engage with, and we don't get to see their ideological conflicts and their different ideas of how they feel about it. And I think that through that you just get a better sense of how these things compare and contrast. Um, yeah, for me, it's not. I actually like that it's not super overstated in this movie. Like, it's somewhat like there are multiple scenes where it's like, okay, I get what you're talking about. I'm not saying it's like super subtle, but I wouldn't want this to be too brought up too much. I think I just want more character interpersonal conflict that brings up these ideas.
Yeah, that is what I mean though when I say
Yeah.
that sort of thing, because I think this again the setup you've created with the specifically the characters you've chosen to put on the boat, like you've created this setup that is ripe for conflict. You've got seafaring people, as they call them in the movie, seamen.
Yeah.
You've got some
Yeah.
seamen on board. You've
Yeah.
got the Antichrist Dracula, religious kind of inherent figure, and as his opposite, a cook who is very devout, like religious specifically, not just a superstitious seafarer. And then you've got a doctor. Like that's a cool combination of characters. And then also now you've got a girl who believes in the folklore as well, a different form of superstition or religion, and
Yep.
a child who's potentially open to the possibilities. And I feel like they don't do enough with that.
Yeah.
But like you said, a good collection of characters. You've got like the groundwork. You've
Yeah.
done that much, and so that was good on them. I think, yeah. Last thing I kind of want to talk about is, does this get a sequel? There's kind of like the game is afoot kind of moment,
Yeah.
almost Sherlock Holmes, like I gotta go get this guy, kind of like.
Yeah, and I think that's
Dude.
great. Like, I actually,
Yeah.
I saw the other day, and I was like, yeah, I'd absolutely see another one of those. Where it's specifically, again, if it was like a Jack the Ripper thing, like there's a killer in London, and then there's also an interesting thing where it's like he's the only one that knows, and then maybe he meets other people from Transylvania or whatever, and there's this and that, and I would see a sequel for sure.
Me too, and I like that was
Yeah.
kind of the joke of my Letterboxd review. Did you see it, by the way?
No.
It's kind of annoying, I bet, but like I just said the conceit of the review was, what are they gonna call the sequel? And then I go on for like a page of potential names, but it stops being about names and is about other things eventually. Like it's more of a conversation with myself in the form of movie titles. Anyways, but part of it, I kind of interwove like real bits, being like, well, what happens next in the story? And like when they go to London, that's where they meet the Van Helsing. Like that's where that character is from. Fucking do Van Helsing. I don't like maybe Clemens is Van Helsing.
No, I want
he's
Clemens to be the
friends
guy.
Maybe he's friends with Van Helsing. Like he would either like meet Van Helsing or become the role of Van Helsing.
That's what I would
in anything but name, right?
Yeah.
There's a part later where a character of the eponymous Renfield does show up. Like maybe it's the last voyage of the Demeter and then the asylum, right? Like that's where the next. That's also a really great movie location to do a vampire thing, an asylum, and that's part of the lore. Dracula also is supposed to I think build a house, like that's his plan. Dracula's house, like really great visual ideas come to mind, and I can totally see Clemens being on the hunt for someone and making a new ragtag group of quirky characters in London. I would totally see a sequel to this, despite being kind of disappointed by this one. Do you have any ideas for the sequel?
I think what we've described. I think we've got some good ones out there.
I think Clemens rebuilds the Demeter because that was part of the joke, was like, what do you call a sequel to this movie? Because it's not about the Demeter anymore. That's gone. Unless wait. The second last voyage of the Demeter. I think that's a prequel though. The Demeter sails again. I don't know. The Demeter 2. He rebuilds the Demeter. we're just really insistent about the boat thing. Like, can you imagine? We've set up. Okay, Dracula is on land now in London. What happens?
And they go back to the boat.
First thing, they're like, okay, we have to get them back on the boat. That's what this is about. It's like one of those Marvel like post-credit scenes we're gonna completely ignore where the last movie
we're just
left
going
off
right
and
back.
do something completely different.
Yeah.
Straight like left turn. That's all I have to say about this movie. Do you have any other
That's all I
final
have to
points?
say too.
Well, we have a segment we do post-movie.
Yeah, so this is the part where we ask the most important question. Would this movie be better if the Predator from the movie Predator was in it? So we asked that question. What's interesting, the Predator itself in the same sort of vein of movies. It's kind of the same sort of thing.
Monster in the House.
I don't think Predator would make this movie better.
Actually,
I think probably not. I actually think Dracula has the groundwork of being a very strong antagonist in this movie that they just don't do quite enough with. So I'd say no. I don't want Predator in there.
He is basically Predator. Dracula is basically, so it would just be
he's
two
Predator
of the
and
same.
Alien. Yeah, he's Predator and Alien and the Thing. He's all of those things.
It would just be two of the same guy, and it would be. I think it would be too much, which is not something you usually hear when we do this segment. Anyways, Peter, we have a segment. Just kidding, I'm Peter. Predator's picks. I'm gonna do it like Peter. Predator's picks. So yeah, we have this where we talk about what we've watched, listened, read. Usually it's watched. Aiden, what are some things you've watched?
Yeah, so it's been a little while since we've recorded an episode, and so we both have quite exhaustive lists. I will touch upon all of them, but only go into some of them more briefly. So one of the first things that I was doing was sort of a Fincher watch through. I don't know if I'll stick through this, but I kind of want to just complete the Fincher catalog. So I rewatched Zodiac, which I'm not a huge fan of. I was not a huge fan of it when I had first watched it, and watched this again had somewhat the same opinion, more or less. It's weird that Jake Gyllenhaal isn't in that movie for 40 minutes. Whatever. There are other things to get into. Then I watched for the first time The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Not a big fan. In the case with both movies, I think that my big problem was screenwriting and not directing. I think that David Fincher is a very good director, but I did not like the stories very much of either, to be honest, although I liked Zodiac a lot more. Another thing that I watched, I'm bouncing all around here, is that something I may have mentioned before, is that one of my favorite movies ever is a movie called La Jetée, which is a French short film. And so I watched the American movie that is based on it, known as 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. You can definitely see that it's an adaptation of La Jetée. I actually think it builds on some of the ideas really well. I think that the filmmaking is really interesting in it. It has this kind of absurd sort of lens. I think that there may be some problems here and there, but my cat is meowing. Yeah, Lola agrees with me. But yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed it. I like the aesthetics of it a lot. It's a cool movie. So I've been talking about The Thing a lot this episode. That's because I watched The Thing for the first time somewhat recently. That's a very good movie. I like that movie a lot. Very, very tight, classic movie. That's the kind of shit that, you stand on the shoulders of when you're making a horror movie, I think, for sure. I think a lot of horror movies try to do that.
Yeah.
And try to...
Like, if you were going to do a Dracula on a boat, you might stand on the shoulders of this movie.
Yeah. But the practical effects are great. Performances are great. Great. Good premise. I know it's a remake, but yeah, really great premise, and I think it's fun. Alex and I... Oh, actually, I'll leave those. To the very end. Sure. I watched the movie La Piscine, which is a French movie, I believe, directed by Jacques Leray or something like that, his name. This was kind of just a random one that I had found on the Criterion channel, and I really liked it. It's actually a really, really interesting movie, and that I think was surprisingly progressive in its ideas. It was made in the 60s, and I think that it actually had some really interesting ideas about gender and power and bodies and stuff, and I quite liked it. There's some weird kind of things that happen in it that I think just pacing wise that are kind of bizarre, but I quite liked that movie. I I really like the movie The Long Goodbye by Robert Altman. And so I watched another movie he did with Elliot Gould called The California Split. That was a really good movie. Love the way he directs. He is good master of film form, I would say. Yeah, and then so a bunch of movies. Alex and I went to actually, I'll do this one first. Saw the movie Talk to Me. Really, really liked that movie. I thought it was a really fun, great horror movie. A lot of fresh ideas. Exciting to see a couple of filmmakers who are clearly very passionate and doing something really fun. And then Alex and I went to a film festival, the Gimli International Film Festival. And I saw a couple movies there. Namely, I saw The Green Fog by Winnipeg legend Guy Madden. I forgot his name for a second. This is a really interesting movie. If people don't know about it, it's completely comprised of edited clips of other movies, and it constructs a narrative through that. Very interesting project. I think that sometimes it's really great, and then other times it's kind of hard to follow. But I think all in all, I quite like this movie a lot. And clearly also, like a labor of love, like something that's really.
I'll add specifically, it's Vertigo. They're doing Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo using clips from other people's movies, and like a lot of movies, they do all the title cards at the end, and I was like, I had no idea it was that many movies. I thought they kept going back to the same, like 3. There was like 50 movies they used. That was crazy.
Yeah, no, that was really good. There have been multiple versions of it too, which is interesting. Like they've used different movies throughout the years, as I understand it. I think I heard something like that. We also watched a movie called Piaf, which was a really interesting kind of Cronenberg-esque movie, except it didn't dip into the body horror section. It was more of like a really kind of luxurious and beautiful body kind of movie, and I thought it was really, really interesting, dealing with a lot of those same themes that you might expect from a body horror movie like a Cronenberg, like The Fly and stuff like that, but kind of a different take on it. I really, really liked the aesthetics of it. Cool movie. That was probably my favorite one I saw at that film festival. We also watched an Icelandic movie called Beautiful Beings. This was kind of a coming-of-age movie. Also quite good. Had some problems with it, but it's a really interesting movie about boys and kind of friendship between adolescent boys and this game of dominance while also having genuine care for each other and this and that. So that's what I watched. A lot of things.
I can't help but notice that you've also written down The Nice Guys.
Oh, I forgot. Okay, yeah. So I watched the movie The Nice Guys.
What's that about?
Oh, like I forgot.
The 2016 Shane Black movie?
I did see
the movie
did
that
you see
like to say. No, this is the movie that I say is my favorite movie.
I know.
And you didn't tell me you did that.
I thought okay, so I thought you would have seen on Letterboxd my review for this movie because I mentioned you in it, and I say.
Oh no, you don't get. I don't get tags or anything. I don't. Okay.
No, well, I didn't tag you. I just thought you might see it. So I gave this movie 3.5 stars and gave it a review. And I gave my review was, "I'm sorry, Alex."
Nice.
I think this movie is very funny in a lot of areas. Very, very funny. I just had some problems with it. Like I just didn't think. It's kind of. Yeah, I didn't love it all the way through. Like there are parts that I think are not as good. I'm actually trying to think of specifics, but I'm blanking on like what my problem.
Exactly, because it's so good.
No. Like, that's not the reason.
Okay, what I'll say.
There's some weird filmmaking moments I think in that movie.
What I'll say is that.
Yeah.
When I say it's my favorite movie, by no means do I think it's the best crafted written movie I've ever seen in my life. This is the movie that I get the most joy out of, and it's like a comfort movie, which is why I probably gave it 5 stars, because like that is the kind of movie I would revisit and be like, man, I love this movie because it's so funny, and Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe are just like an amazing pairing. Yeah.
I thought it was very funny for some parts. Some jokes landed a lot better for me than others. But yeah, I liked it overall.
Cool. I've been watching some movies as well. As Aiden said, we went to a film festival and I watched all those same movies. I don't feel the need to talk more about any of those though. I also watched Talk to Me. There was a moment. It's interesting, some behind the scenes lore. We were going to do Talk to Me for a pod. I might have seen it anyways because I had liked the trailer, but it didn't end up happening. But so I saw the movie, and I think it was executed pretty well. Like, the filmmaking is quite strong. I think the visuals are really good. There's some really fun camera stuff they do. I think in terms of viewing experience, that's where the movie starts to lose me. It is quite a brutal watch for like gore. It's just like,
that's what you're okay.
Yeah, like just what happens to the characters is quite upsetting, and it's not the type of movie that I watch in terms.
But I think that's awesome.
You find that awesome, sick. And I find that
it's sick that it's depraved.
It's our varying stances on how we feel about depraved. So we agree that they did depraved very well, but that means different things for us. So I went out of that wishing I hadn't seen it. I was just quite unsettled. So they did a good job, I guess. Yeah. I was quite cynical. More than anything, I was just like angry. I was just like, man, this movie makes me feel bad. And anyways.
I
didn't care for it. I've been doing Aiden has been doing Fincher. I've been doing Sidney Lumet. I've been doing my Lumet-a-thon. It started with 12 Angry Men, classic movie, very, very good. One of the best movies I've ever seen. Then I watched, I think next was The Pawnbroker. Not as strong. I will say I found it kind of dull. It's a post-Holocaust movie, so someone kind of living with having gone through that scenario, and the way like memories just kind of crop up based on things happening in his present life is quite well done. But yeah, I just found as a narrative it wasn't nearly as strong. Failsafe was really good. It's funny, 12 Angry Men came out in 1957. And I'm picking only movies he's done that are quite well received or quite popular, and so 1957 was that one. Pawnbroker, Failsafe, and The Hill came out in a period of 2 years. Two of the movies were released in the same year, and it was 1964 and 1965, I believe, were when those three movies came out. So jumping from 57 to that is very interesting to me, and I think the next one I'm gonna watch of his does not come out until the 70s, and I think that's
really.
I think next is Dog Day Afternoon. No, it's Serpico. Serpico is next with Pacino. Anyways, Failsafe is really awesome. It's like, what if it's a Cold War movie where the worst case scenario has happened. Not that the Russians are like attacking, but what if there was a technical error that makes the Americans attack the Russians? So a false affirmative like go has been sent out, and they keep trying to undo it.
Yeah.
I think there's a cat.
There is a cat.
There's a cat issue going on.
Keep going.
Anyways, so Failsafe was very good, just like the quite anti-military and how technology and human systems both will fall apart, and also quite cynical. But a movie, I found that Lumet's movies are frequently quite cynical after 12 Angry Men, but this is the kind of cynical that I like. So Failsafe I liked, and I think I liked The Hill maybe a little bit more than Failsafe. So I didn't know much about this movie. It's Sean Connery, he's great in this movie, and he's one of a couple of army folks who are in jail. They're in army jail I think it's in India, and that's where this movie is set, in army jail. And it's basically about how the people who are in charge, like the military police or like the prison people, are just like the worst fucking people in the world, and just like truly making these people miserable. And there's this like torture thing they've concocted called The Hill. It's just a hill, but it's sand, and they're forced to like lug their packs up and then back down and then up and back down over and over and over again. And mind you, they're in India where it's very, very hot. And so, you know, it's just like ACAB police brutality kind of thing, but for like the prison complex. And it's very clear that he's anti-military, and so I very much enjoyed that movie. I also watched 2 new movies. I watched TMNT, the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Good movie. I really like the art style. I do think it got a little bit kind of like, maybe not tropey, but kind of failed to define itself as a distinct story. Very much like, I've seen this before, I know where this is going.
Right.
Kind of in the way that Spider-Verse was so, like the first one, Into the Spider-Verse, was so like, I truly don't know what's going to happen next. I didn't feel that in this one, so it was kind of let down, but very, very nice art style. And I really like the kids, the turtles. Were like, apparently they improved, and it's so clear that like they sound like kids. They sound like teenagers. They start doing like just teenager isms that you could not possibly write. That has to be like kids bouncing off of each other. There's one part where they're like I vaguely know the reference, but I think I'm too old for this. But like the idea that drug dealers have the bacon, egg, and cheese, something like that. And they're just saying bacon, egg, and cheese for like 30 seconds. And it's like, that's what kids do. They're so funny. And there was actually a moment in the movie that I was a little bit emotional about. Like the last shot, I was like, oh, that's really nice that they did that. I was surprised. Nice. So I would recommend people go check that one out, because it was a lot of fun. And the last movie I watched was Theater Camp. That was an awesome movie. I don't think it's perfect. I do think it's a lot of material crammed into its runtime. I'll describe it. It's a mockumentary about a theater camp, where kids, it's a sleepaway camp where kids are there for like maybe a month, and they're supposed to put on like a musical or a show.
Right.
And it's about how the quirky counselors are trying to figure stuff out. There's a newcomer who the owner of the camp has been indisposed of, and her son has to take over, and it's like a struggling like financially. So it's kind of like another, like, that's a tropey thing, is like the camp is struggling when we have to save the camp kind of thing. But it doesn't become too much of that. There's a lot of characters, so it is kind of like, I don't know if anyone got their full due, but it is so funny, especially if you're kind of in the know of theater stuff. So I used to do theater, so like I kind of get a lot of it, especially this is like New York theater, so a lot of like Broadway references. I found it incredibly funny. And yeah, lots of great stars in there too. Ayo Edebiri's in it. Patty Harrison is in it from I Think You Should Leave. She has a role in it, and I did not know that. Ben Platt
Jimmy
is in
Tatro
it,
is in that, right?
is he, is he the main guy?
He's the guy who's like a douchey kind of like frat guy type.
Yeah, I don't know who he is. Like, I know he's got a persona to him.
Well, he was a YouTuber. He was a YouTuber back in the day. But he's actually he's been quite good in multiple things. He was in the show American Vandal, and I thought he was great in that show.
Oh yeah, see, I haven't seen that one yet. He's good in this. He's very good. Yeah. But also Ben Platt is in this, and I know people don't like Ben Platt.
30-year-old boy.
But see, the thing is, he's not playing a 30-year-old boy, and he's playing an unlikable character. So he's actually playing into type, and it works very well. Also, Molly Gordon is in this. She was in Shiva Baby, and it's actually the movie's created by her and Platt, who it seems have known each other for a long time. I never actually looked it up, but there's archival footage where it does look like they knew each other when they were kids. So it seems to be a very personal story. I really like that movie, and I've actually currently ranked it as my third favorite movie of the year, after Oppenheimer and Asteroid City. I will say, I've heard that other people, like, your mileage may vary if you just don't get theater stuff. It's not, like, it's kind of a niche thing, but I really, really enjoyed it. Next week, Oh, Bottoms is out. Maybe we'll see Bottoms. Maybe he'll be here. That would be very fun. That would be quite pleasurable if that were here. If not, Blue Beetle just came out. So those are options.
Yeah, let's do Blue Beetle.
If you like us, check us out on Instagram and Twitter at Predator v Movies. If you like my thoughts on movies, check me out on Letterboxd at _AlexGordon_. I leave reviews sometimes. Sometimes they get a little bit silly. Yeah.
Yeah, you can also follow me on Letterboxd. I'm 810sunny. That's 810SONNY. My name is Wombo. I also leave reviews sometimes, though they are often short or sparse.
And yours are definitely silly. 90%.
Yeah, mine are silly. You can see
You're kind of a silly guy. Yeah. Peter, do you have anything to plug? Just kidding. You're not here, so you cannot interject anything, which means there's a clause
that you have to leave a review. You are contractually obligated.
If he says no, that's like usually yes, but also there's a clause if he's not here, that's an automatic no. So yes, you have to leave a review. You're under contract, obligated to leave a review, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, all of the above, because that's how people see the show, and that's why we're doing it. We're doing it for you.
We're doing it for the love, dude.
We're doing it for the love, exactly. But until next time, I'm Alex.
I'm Peter. I made an.
You're not. And this was Predator versus Movies. We'll see you next week.
Woo,
Pew 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 pew.